Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review. I'm here today to talk to you about the mishandling of representation of the CW's Riverdale when it comes to the Pussycats. They dropped the ball big time with this one. Now, Riverdale. Oh yes, Riverdale. Now that's created by Greg Bertinelli. And also this other dude named Roberto Sacasa. Ooh, Lord have mercy. Sacasa. I have no idea how to pronounce that dude's name. He's the dude who's responsible for like all the Archie comics and the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina and all the spinoffs and like stuff like that. And he's gonna be creating the Pretty Little Liars reboot series. Now, Riverdale has a diverse cast, but it is the checkmark system cast. Riverdale has a huge problem when it comes to their people of color on the show. Because her character is brought in as kind of like a gang member of the, I forgot what they call it, but they like these snake, they have a name, snake some people, serpent something. She's now the leader of that group, probably after she complained. So she got like a higher up there. And because, when it comes to her getting paid differently, I feel like if you're a main cast member, you should all get paid the same thing. Recurring cast members should be paid less and they get paid the same thing. And then supporting, they get paid less, but they should get paid the same thing. And then background folks, they get paid a whole lot less and they get paid like the same amount. So it's kind of like when she was recurring, I could understand that, but it's kind of like she was probably getting paid a whole lot less than the other recurring people. But now she's part of the main cast. Speaking of recurring characters or supporting characters, or actually who was supposed to be main characters, Josie and the Pussycats. Now, they are like the worst examples of the checkmark system. If you don't know them, they started off in Archie comic books and they became such a huge hit. They became even more popular than Archie. They had their own comics, their own cartoons. I think they was like a band who solved like mysteries, stuff like that. Very Scooby-Doo-ish, you know what I'm saying? Now, in the original lineup, there was one black girl, there was a redheaded girl, and there was a blonde girl. So 2 white girls and 1 black girl. In the show, they decided to do something really unique. They decided to make all the Pussycats black. And I remember when they did that, I'm like, wow, that's a really bold statement of what y'all did. Because they're not supposed to look like that. And I'm wondering, like, wow, what's really going to become of this? They must going to be, like, pretty, like, significant to, like, the show to make such a bold decision change. And I bet you anything, they're probably the first ones to get, like, a spinoff. Boy, how I was wrong. Now, the first season of Riverdale is pretty solid. It ain't great, but it's a whole lot better than the mess that came afterwards. And so throughout the first season, they were trying to solve the murder of who killed Cheryl Blossom's brother. Well, Josie and the rest of the Pussycats, they're a band, like I said before. So they're doing like the music thing. One would think they would help out in the mystery, seeing how that's what they did in their little cartoon series. But no. After a while, people started noticing that the Pussycats started showing up less and less on the show. When you do see them, they will be in the background with the rest of the white cast. They never really helped out. They they would interact with the main cast, but they really didn't add nothing of significance. Um, and so then they just started like performing their songs and dealing with that and dealing with the band. And so it's kind of like, well, why aren't they more involved in this show? Something interesting happened when the second season started. They was there for the first half of the season, which is a 22 episode arc. So they was only there for 11 episodes. After the 11th episode, two of Josie and the Pussycat member bands disappeared from the show completely. Josie was the only one who was still there. And of course, she's there because, her mom is the principal of that school. And then it kind of was like, well, what happened to these other two girls? They were never, ever mentioned again. They weren't mentioned until the spinoff, the, what is it, Kathy Keene show? Is that what it's called? Something like that. Where Josie was on that show. And why was she on that show? Because they wrote her off at the 5th season of Riverdale and they put her on the Kathy Keene show. And so it's kind of like, well, where did these two sophomores disappear from? Or where did they go? You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like you think somebody would raise an eyebrow if like two high school girls who were sophomores just disappeared without a trace, and they was part of a band. You know what I'm saying? Like somebody would like raise an eyebrow to that, but they just got completely written off. And before they was written off, Melody, I don't remember nothing about her whatsoever in the television show. Like I can't remember anything she said. I can't remember like a story arc because there was no story arcs for them. I don't remember nothing. Valerie, to keep her relevant on the show, they had first she had a beef with the rest of the band members to the point where she left the band, and then she started a relationship with Archie. To keep her relevant on the show, she had to play the girlfriend of one of the lead white people. But then they broke up, and then after they broke up, she went back to the band and she just kind of faded away and then got written off the show. And when she first left the band, they added Veronica into the band. Now, Veronica is a Hispanic woman, well, a girl on that show. And so it's kind of like to keep the band relevant on the show, they had to add in that main cast member to fill in some slack, to like keep them people talking about them. And so, of course, whenever you see them now, it's mainly with Veronica, and she's doing all the talking and stuff, and like a lot of the singing. And it's just kind of like, why would you shoehorn one of the main cast members in to this band that y'all created to be so diverse, just to keep, well, of course, it's to keep them relevant on the show and make people talk about them. But nobody wants to talk about them because they're not doing anything on the show. So then later she leaves the band. And then to keep them relevant again, they brought in Cheryl, who's white, as kind of like a reserve member. And it's just like, okay, we see what you're doing here. The writing is on the wall. And it ain't gonna be good. Then, when the band came back to just being like the threesome, they had a huge argument because they found out that Josie wanted to go solo. So this angered like the other two members. But like I said again, they got written off after the 11th episode of like the second season. However, after so much complaining that fans have done, now in the 5th season of Riverdale, the two actresses that they kicked off the show are now going to make a return. Let's see how much they have to actually do on this show. But of course, what about Josie? Well, they kept her on the show, like I said, to the 5th season, so she went on to a spin-off show. But it wasn't her spin-off show. It was a character that was never, ever mentioned or created on Riverdale. She comes from the Archie comics. And so, like, while she was on Riverdale, of course, to keep her relevant, they had her in a couple of like relationships and stuff. One was with Archie. Okay. The other one was Sweet Pea. Okay. Now, after the 11th episode of the second season, I stopped watching. That because that whole that I forgot his name. The dude, the murderer dude, Lily's dad, Betty's dad, the black mass killer, whatever they called him. That whole story arc was stupid. After that, I realized Riverdale was stupid, and I stopped watching. I don't really know what Josie all really had to do in those relationships she was in. Then, of course, there's the spin-off show. A show with her being on there because she was a character from Riverdale, but it wasn't spun off with her. It was spun off with another actress, another character who was never ever mentioned on the other show. And then they reformed Josie and the Pussycats, and they look like this. Now, one of the girl, the big girl, she is half black. Her name is Cricket. So, but then they also Tallulah Twist, and she is not black. Also, and so the writers, when they couldn't figure out what to do with these characters, because they had way too many characters on the show, they just decided just to write them off and just get rid of them. And it's like that was the hugest missed opportunity for this. They could have had their own spin-off show where they just sing in the band. It could have been like the Beatles, the Monkees, S Club 7. It could have been something like that. And they could have thrown in a couple of murder mysteries too, because, you know, they solve mysteries in that little cartoon series. If you've seen these two actresses, if so, call your local network and give them a job. Alrighty, well, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.